Hey, what's going on, guys? It is Dibs, Mr. Crockpot on Twitter. Today we are breaking down my top matchups between the Eagles and Commanders. Guys, if you are new to the channel and you love the Eagles, please be sure to smash that subscribe button. Let's go. All right, let's break it down. First matchup to watch is the Eagles rushing attack versus Jack Del Rio. What Jalen Hurts does for the Eagles rushing attack is incredible. Through 2 games, the Eagles are first in rushing touchdowns, tied for first in rushing first downs, second in rushing yards, 5th in yards per carry. It goes on and on. I think the Eagles are playing to Jalen Hurts' strengths better than ever in 2022. His improvements in the RPO with the lead blocker is a win-win situation for the Eagles offense every single time. The Eagles have been consistently able to force defenses to make the wrong decision on these plays, and it's truly been impressive to watch. Another area to watch between Jalen Hurts and Jack Del Rio is Jalen Hurts on third down. He's got a 56% success rate, a 106.7 quarterback rating on third downs, a 68.7 completion percentage. In 2022, the Eagles are first in third down conversions per game. If there is anything we have learned through 2 games this season, it's that the Eagles offense is elite. That begins and ends with Jalen Hurts and what it means for the Eagles rushing attack. I don't know how Jack Del Rio slows down Jalen Hurts and this Eagles running attack, but we'll see what happens on Sunday. Let's move on to my next matchup to watch. The Jalen Hurts train does not stop here because this is all about Jalen Hurts and his progress in 2022. I'm talking about Jalen Hurts versus the Devonte Smith and Washington pass rush. The Commanders' defensive line was simply overmatched against the Lions in week 2. The linebackers seemed lost for most of the game. Their secondary was confused. The Commanders lacked depth on the defensive line. It was a tale of 2 halves for the Commanders across their first 2 games. In week 1, Jonathan Allen, Montez Sweat, and Daron Payne wreaked havoc on the Jaguars' offensive line, combining for 15 pressures and including 3 sacks. In week 2, the Lions' offensive line was easily able to open up holes against Washington's D-line, allowing just 2 sacks and rushing for 137 yards before contact. On the other end, the Eagles' offensive line only allowed 6 pressures against the Vikings on 43 dropbacks. Most notably, the interior Eagles' offensive line was simply dominant, with Jason Kelce, Landon Dickerson, and Isaac Seumalo allowing just 3 total pressures in week 2. In stark contrast, the interior offensive line for Washington is hurting big time. Center Chase Roulier is on the IR, and starting right guard Wes Schweitzer might not play on Sunday. Jalen Hurts still needs to prove that he can win against consistent pressure from a D-line, but that is not likely going to be an issue here in week 3. I expect Jalen Hurts to have a very clean pocket on Sunday en route to an Eagles week 3 victory. Let's move on to my next matchup. My next matchup to watch is Josh Sweat versus Carson Wentz. The Eagles defense generated 23 pressures on Kirk Cousins on 50 dropbacks in week 1, and Josh Sweat led all Eagles defenders with 6 pressures and a pass rush win rate of 22.2%. In fact, Josh Sweat is top 10 when it comes to pressures this season. Kirk Cousins was 5 of 13 passing for 37 yards and a touchdown and 2 interceptions when under pressure against the Eagles, and giving Carson Wentz a heavy dose of pressure is not a recipe for success for Washington. It's a lot of the same when it comes to Carson Wentz. He still tries to play too much hero ball. His pocket awareness is god-awful. He's always been a reckless decision maker, and he makes way too many risky throws. Carson Wentz was pressured on nearly 40% of his dropbacks and completed just 5 of 14 pass attempts with a 3.8 yards per attempt in week 2 against the Lions. The Eagles defense gave up 35 points to the Lions in week 1, but when they do bring the pressure, they've actually been really good. Last year, the Eagles ranked 29th in blitz rate and 29th in defensive EPA per play when they did blitz. This year, it's a completely different animal. The Eagles ranked 12th in blitz rate and 3rd in the league in defensive EPA per play when they bring pressure. Look for the Eagles' defensive line, most notably Josh Sweat, to get into the grill of Carson Wentz and get that guy throwing on his back foot. My next matchup to watch is TJ Edwards versus the Commanders' ground game. Antonio Gibson has 88 total yards through 2 games while averaging just 3.1 yards per carry. It's a very short sample size, but it's also a stark contrast to his average of nearly 4.5 yards per carry the last 2 seasons. The Commanders are averaging 3.5 yards per carry so far through 2 games, which is 6th worst in the NFL right now. Meanwhile, the Eagles lead the league with 6 touchdowns on the ground, while the Commanders have 0. TJ Edwards had a huge comeback game against the Vikings with 10 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 3 quarterback pressures, and 2 of those led to interceptions. He was also excellent in coverage, allowing 0 first downs on 9 targets. The blitz is where TJ Edwards really shined against the Vikings, generating big-time pressure up the middle when used. If Antonio Gibson and the Washington offense struggles to manage time of possession and keep the Eagles off the field, it could be a very long day for the Commanders. TJ Edwards has the green dot for the Birds, and he showed his leadership in a big way in Week 2. I expect TJ Edwards to continue to play well against Washington on Sunday. Alright, let's get into my last matchup to watch, and that is Devonte Smith versus the Commanders slot defenders. This one could have easily been Darius Slay versus Terry McLaurin because Slay was an absolute monster in Week 2. Slay recorded more interceptions than receptions allowed in coverage of Justin Jefferson, and he's proved that he's elite. However, slot receivers have been a big-time problem for the Commanders defense in back-to-back weeks. Christian Kirk shined in his Jaguars debut for 6 catches on 9 targets for 117 yards in Week 1. Most of that damage came from the slot, and 50 of those yards came after contact. Amon-Ra St. Brown ended up with 9 catches for 116 yards and 2 touchdowns in Week 2. Those 2 guys absolutely decimated the Commanders' defense from the slot. Meanwhile, Devonte Smith was absolutely electric against the Vikings. I'm really interested in Kendall Fuller and William Jackson III this week. Jackson has allowed a 152.1 quarterback rating on 10 targets, while Fuller has given up 21.6 yards per reception and 108 receiving yards. If I had to make an Eagles player of the game prediction for Week 3, I think I'm rolling with Devonte Smith this week. All signs point to a huge week for Devonte against the Commanders. So those are my top 5 matchups to watch between the Eagles and Commanders. Did I miss any? Please let me know down in that comment section. Give this video a like if you love the Eagles. Thank you everyone for watching. I am Dibes. Follow me on Twitter at Mr. Crockpot. Stay awesome, everyone.